Well, hello there. Welcome back to the Hot Tag. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite all-time performers in the history of the business, my favorite WWE superstar, The Undertaker. As you all know, Survivor Series will provide the final farewell to the Deadman, but I wanted to take some time to put a couple of pieces together celebrating The Undertaker and kind of looking back on his career. And one of the topics that I wanted to discuss, his five greatest. I like to do fives and lists. So I wanted to go over his, in my opinion, five greatest rivalries in the WWE. There are some good ones. There are some that we hoped would be bigger. But there is no right answer. There's no wrong answer. I know there's some that people feel probably should make the list that don't. But get started. The first one that I want to bring up is Edge, number 5. Now some may say, man, Edge is at 5. He should be higher. We're going to start there. And to think this all started wrong place, wrong time. The ultimate opportunist, Edge, cashing in money the bank after Taker was destroyed by Batista, after by Mr. Mark Henry, and just swoops in. You knew when you heard, when you see him coming down to the ring, you heard the music, you see him coming down, and you just hear Michael call, "Oh God, oh, not this way, not this way. You've got to be kidding me." You knew it was happening. Took the first spear, kicked out, barely, but he's barely able to stand, couldn't kick out, and boom. Edge is your champ. Multiple, had to jump through so many hoops to get a title match. Constantly getting screwed over by Edge at every turn. Then you have the build up to their match at WrestleMania 24. A fantastic match. Undertaker's first time main eventing WrestleMania, if I remember correctly. I can't remember if he did with Diesel or Sid. I don't remember. It might not be his first time. It's Edge's first time main eventing, so I can say that. It's a lot of trust that you built. This is back when the WWE actually built things long term. You build this long, slow grinding story that takes place for a huge amount of time. Boom. Finally, Undertaker, the streak versus the title, 2 years in a row. Undertaker prevails, wins. Edge can't let it go, still competes. They have the championship match at Backlash. He taps out there as well. The triangle choke is banned. The title is vacated. Ultimately, one night stand, I believe it was, a TLC match. If The Undertaker loses, he's banished from the WWE. Edge wins. Definitely sucked as a Taker fan, but story, part of the allure of wrestling. So eventually he is reinstated, and then you get the final into the feud, the Hell in a Cell match. Taker wins, banish Edge to hell. One of the weird, one of those things that was, even just recalling it now, it's really, really weird. Okay, but that was the end. I believe they did cross paths on Raw, if I remember correctly. Pick your poison, Edge versus Orton. I want to say it was Jack Swagger for Orton, but Christian came out and interrupted Edge's promo, so they had a match. And it's just funny because I don't even know, Orton comes on and thing, Edge, hey Edge, a great match. The funny thing is, I don't even know why Christian's out there, because that's not the opponent I picked for you. And then you hear the gong and just the look on Edge's face, you gotta be kidding me. And he didn't even participate in the match, got himself counted out, but still, just listening to the announcers relive their rivalry, great. Is Edge at his peak heelness and the Undertaker chasing the title, gets the title, and then the constant just the constant interference and screw jobs, all the barriers put in place by Vicky and Edge. Great rivalry. Lasted a long time, about a year and a half, I think, maybe a little more, a little shy. Great rivalry. So that for me is number 5. Number 4, which when talking with friends, they actually thought that it should be reversed. I have Orton at number 4. Now for Orton, this was huge because to me, this is what made Orton main event. He did win a championship beating Benoit. He did have, some matches with Triple H, some other big matches, but this was the one we took on the Legend Killer gimmick, the ultimate legend, and not necessarily the wrestler, The Undertaker, but the streak, being the one to end the streak. And they had a hell of a match at WrestleMania. Really great build up. Just short. A lot of people felt the same way, but just short. Couldn't get the job done. The Undertaker and the hearse crashing the hearse into the I can't remember what it's, a truck trailer. And we thought that was, the end of the Undertaker for a bit. He killed the Undertaker, killed the Legend of the Undertaker Survivor Series. Orton, as he always seems to do at Survivor Series, gets the job done, finds a way to win, sole survivor. And SmackDown celebrating the ring, and then you have the Druids come out, the lights, and you have the casket set on fire, and boom, Undertaker comes out kicking ass, and they're not done yet. Casket match, Hell in a Cell match, great rivalry. And even I thought they may have a rematch, especially as Orton got older, and since he already had his elite status now cemented, that they may come back and have a rematch. They never did. But I do remember Raw down the road, Stephanie handpicking the Undertaker to face Orton, and it was a great match on Raw. I mean, the rivalry, the feud per se was over, but just again, they have a match, and you hear the announcers relive those moments. A great rivalry, one that the Undertaker ended up going over in again, but at the same time, it helps cementing superstar in Randy Orton. Number 3. This is where the list is probably going to get pretty automatic, because you probably know who 2 are. The 3rd, you can probably imagine who it is. You just need to know the order. So number 3, Mick Foley. And this was hard for me because I actually wanted to put him number 2. I feel like number 1 should be obvious, but I have Foley at number 3. The reason I have him at number 3 and not at number 2 is they had one big stage match. We all know what it is. It's Hell in a Cell. You all know it. Thrown off the cage or off the cell, chokeslam through the cell, slammed on the thumbtacks, and then tombstone. All just is one of the. I'll never forget watching that match, because just when Foley got thrown off the cell, like, it still gives me like this weird feeling. It's not even goosebumps because of nostalgia. It's just the display of just abuse, violence that happened in that match to Foley. Is just hard to fathom that he could just keep going. It was crazy. I've never seen it. I don't think to this day I've seen anything like that in wrestling. Nothing. I've seen things that have made me cringe and worry if the wrestler's okay, but the match continues or it stops or whatever. But I've never seen anything like that. Like, just, it's, he legit thought he was dead after getting thrown off the cell. Then to him not moving or barely moving after getting chokeslammed through, it's like, what the hell is going on? But they had a great rivalry. And it was cool because he was a character, because you had this mythical character in Undertaker He's supernatural. You can't hurt him. He's so difficult to be able to actually get a legit win against. And then you had someone that could go toe to toe with the Undertaker that was had just as high of pain tolerance level as Taker did, was pulling out his own hair, deranged, just creepy. The music, his old theme, and just his mannerisms in the ring, the screeching, he was perfect. The mandible claw, just locking it in, and just the screeching and yelling while the person is passing out. It was a perfect match for Taker. They had the Hell in a Cell, of course, is what everyone will remember. The Boiler Room Brawls, they had so many intense matches between the two of them, predicated on just hard hitting bumps. And again, Undertaker ultimately went over. I feel like I'm saying this a lot. Undertaker went over in the feud, but it helped cementing Foley as a star in the WWF at the time. Number 2. And it was tough for me to go with this, but I had to go with this guy, number 2, because they had more matches, and the matches that some of those matches were on big stages, and it's hard to put Foley over. It's kind of come as no surprise. Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. Once I say big stages, you already know I'm talking about WrestleMania. WrestleMania 25 and 26. WrestleMania 25 is the greatest wrestling match that I have seen in the WWF, WWE, bar none. Nothing touches that match. They came really close. The rematch at 26 was a really good match. Some people prefer it more, but for me, WrestleMania 25. One tornado DDT where Taker, did fully land on his head, and the camera caught that, and the obvious, the dive over the top rope that he couldn't get out far enough, which because he never did it again. Even when it was teased, something would happen, like someone come in the ring and hit him or whatever, like that wasn't gonna happen again. But it started before that. I think that's something that people forget. When people think about Michaels and Taker, they think about those WrestleMania matches. They think about them being the last two at the Rumble and legit having a match at the Rumble, it felt like. I don't remember how long the two of them are in the ring as the final two, but it felt like a match. And it's the same thing, just great chemistry between the two of them. But it goes back before that. I remember when Shawn Michaels was in DX. I know it seems like a lifetime ago. In DX, defending the championship against Taker, and constantly China, Triple H, Rude, interfering. Can't just let the two have their match. So you have the first ever Hell in a Cell. I argue it's the best Hell in a Cell still to this date. Don't get me wrong, the most impactful one is Foley and Taker, but the best actual match is Michaels and Taker. And you had the introduction of Kane in that as well. A great match. The casket match, Kane interfered in that one too. Unfortunately, that match, the injury, the back injury, spine injury to Shawn, ended up costing him multiple years in his career down the road. But man, you take those matches, just those two pay-per-view matches before, let alone their interactions and the promos that Michaels cut on Taker before, and then you fast forward to Extreme Vets, Hall of Fame caliber wrestlers putting on WrestleMania 25 and 26 performance. If anyone asks me, why do you get into wrestling? Why does wrestling appeal to you so much? I'll sit there with 40 minutes and I will show them WrestleMania 25, Taker and Michaels. As perfect as a match as you're going to get, the way that they had the audience eating out of their hands on both sides, just divided, split for Taker and for Michaels, and just the fans are just so into the match. That's the match I show them. On paper, the best matches that he had in the rivalry were with HBK, not debatable. But that only leaves one spot, and you obviously have to know who it is. The longest rivalry in the history of the WWF. And it's crazy because in a time where wrestlers don't have long, like, in order to have a first of all, in order to have a long career, you have to be relevant. In order to be relevant, one, you have to stay healthy, and there's a lot of other things that you have to be able to do. Have a good spot in the card, good character, be able to work well in the ring. You have to have a mix of those things. Careers don't tend to last that long. So you're talking about, not only did this career last long for Taker for 30 years, but this guy, this rivalry lasted for 20 plus years. And I'm talking about The Undertaker and Kane. They couldn't ask for a better rivalry. I think that it was really cool at the time because, again, Taker is built, like, Taker is a supernatural character in the wrestling industry. And as it started to move towards the Attitude Era, you get to a point where it's a little more realistic. But then you look at Taker, who is, you know, he's 6'11", 7 feet tall, portrayed in wrestling. I mean, he's obviously not that tall, but who is supposed to stand up to someone like this? Like, he can't lose clean. How could he ever? He's such an imposing figure. He has power beyond the grave. Like, how could you have someone who could compete with this man and make you feel like he legitimately can be beat? Foley was a unique character that fit a role that made it possible and gave someone for Taker to work with. That's something else that gets forgotten in all this. Taker needs people to work with. It's sometimes hard because of his size and how you do your storytelling to make it viable for him to lose. Kane was perfect. This backstory as brothers, the setting the family on fire, the house on fire, the mental scars, the permanent, body scars to Kane. He comes back for revenge. Taker won't fight him, and then he finally gives, and you have the first match. Just believe it was WrestleMania 14. Taker against Kane. The first, of course now it happens more often, but the first person to ever kick out of a tombstone. He did it twice in the same match, and damn near kicked out of a third one too. It took 3 tombstones to keep this man down. An inferno match between the two of them. Paul Bear jumping back and forth on both sides was aligned with Kane. Then later on, he was aligned with Taker. Then later on, came back with Taker and realigned with Kane and realigned with Taker. Just he can't decide whose side he wants to be on. But great matches. Even as their characters morph, it felt like even when they drifted away, they came back together. Tag team champions. You had the badass and Kane with, the different outfit. I'm trying to think of it, like the top was kind of transparent and like sleeveless, and then you had badass Taker, and then the ultimate betrayal, the buried alive match between Vince and Taker, which we knew Vince was going to take an ass whooping, like, yes. And then Kane comes out and buries his own brother alive, screws him over, and then you come full circle, WrestleMania 20. I have to look at the notes. I have it up here. I don't remember. Trying to go off the top of my head with that one. Yeah, WrestleMania 20. Undertaker reemerges as the Deadman. Short match. A scary botch there with the back body drop where he had to grab the ropes. It looked like he's about to go over and outside the ring, which clearly wasn't the case. The spacing was a little off there, but establish him. But the one thing I liked is I felt like Undertaker always, things happen between the two of them, but it always worked towards building up Kane, with the exception of WrestleMania 20. Kane kicks out of the tombstone. Even though Taker lost, who really won? In terms of reverence, it's like Kane's peak powers at the time. This dude kicked out of multiple tombstones. Like, it took the Undertaker going overboard in order to be able to win that match. Still got beat down with a chair after the match. An Inferno match. Yeah, Kane won, Kane lost, but I mean, obviously, Undertaker really couldn't lose because he'd been set on fire. Not that that didn't happen at Elimination Chamber. Pyro guy. Have some chat for him. But you come full circle to this is a rivalry that ended the 90s, early 2000s, and we're able to come revisit this in the 10s because Undertaker was attacked, put in a vegetative state. Kane wins Money in the Bank, cashes it in on Ray, wins the championship. A match against him, yes, the Undertaker returns. He's in the casket after they kind of played around with that for a bit, building up the suspense. Undertaker's weak. They have a match. Kane dominates. Paul Bearer comes back with the urn. He gets his powers back, turns his back on him. Ultimately, in that feud, in that particular feud, Kane goes over. But again, the fact that you could have a rivalry that started in the 90s and come back over 10 years later, it's pretty impressive. And still to have the draw and still have the attention and hold the attention of the audience and have them care about those two characters. Definitely his best rival. Equal in terms of strength, equal in terms of power and size. Both have supernatural powers. One the devil answers to, I guess, and Taker and the devil's favorite demon and Kane. You couldn't ask for anything more. To me, it's the best 5 rivals. I know some people would say, what about Batista? They had a great one, but I feel Edge and Orton, even though those matches were more power displays, obviously with Batista's wrestling style, but I felt I liked the promos more with Orton. I like like you get the casket where he was like playing sleep in the casket. That is such a great promo. The Undertaker popping out of the casket on fire. Such a great moment. Edge. Come on now. Edge and Vicky. The promos that they would cut on Taker. The shenanigans they would pull. Putting him in matches against Viscera, against the Big Show. That's to soften him up. Like stuff like that. The guy that would go crazy. It's not Otis. I'm trying to think of his name. But it's like he was like a nice guy, but then like once the bell would ring, can't remember his name, but then he would just go off to another place and just turn into a monster and stuff like that. That puts them over to me. Triple H is another one that I know people, my friends and some others that I've mentioned this list to, were really upset that Triple H wasn't on there because he has faced Undertaker 3 times at WrestleMania. The reason that I don't go with Triple H is because, again, that's a rivalry that you had going to WrestleMania 17, and then you jump up to 27 and 28. So 10 years as well. But it's different with them because even though Triple H and Taker were stars, I always felt that their paths crossed each other, but it wasn't one-on-one. There was always others involved. It wasn't just the two of them. It was Elimination Chamber match. Yeah, they were the last 2. Triple H won, but they were the last 2. DX, he's coming back. He's helping the Rocker. He's helping Kane. It's not just Triple H and Taker. They had moments, but there wasn't a real feud that I could point to and say that's why I would make them, put him on the list. Great matches with others. Angle, No Way Out. Eddie Guerrero. Booker T, King Booker, had some good matches. JBL was another one that I really thought about. And even going old school, Jake the Snake is one that I really considered, but I just couldn't find it in myself to put that one over. But I tell you who the worst is. We all know Giant Gonzalez. One of the worst characters ever. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. That said, do you agree? Probably not. I'm sure we can all agree that Kane is number 1. Maybe some people have Foley number 2, because I know how high of reverence that Hell in a Cell match has with people. But what are your thoughts? Who did I miss? Is the order wrong at the bottom? His Edge, should he be higher? I know that's one that people really like. Is there an old school rival that I left out? Diesel? Someone that maybe you think that deserves to be on this list? Let me know in the comments below. We'll come back with some more Taker videos, though. I have some other thoughts. Like I said, I love the Deadman, so I have to get this out there. Just need to have it physically out there so people can see my thoughts on this guy. That said, I'll see you next video. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.